Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Authentic Audience podcast. My name is Krista Ritma, and I am your host. This episode we recorded in Boulder, Colorado, snowy, sunny, beautiful Boulder. It's been a really beautiful week, lots happening towards the end of the year, and we got to spend a really beautiful week with Trevor and Emery Hall. So that's right, my most requested guest, Trevor Hall, is finally on the show. Timing is everything. I'm so glad it worked out. So happy to know Trevor. If you don't know him, he is an amazing musician, singer, songwriter, and dear, dear friend of me and Clay's. On this episode, we talk a lot about the professional life of a musician. When you turn your passion into your career and the responsibilities that go along with that. We talk about his spiritual path. We talk about Maharajji, our favorite subject, other than Emery, of course. And Trevor shares some deep personal stories and insights into the world of music. I love Trevor. I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan before we became friends, and I'm an even bigger fan now. I can tell you firsthand, he is one of the most real, authentic, brilliant people that I have ever known. And I am lucky to know him. I'm lucky to call him a friend. I am super proud of this conversation. It was a fun one. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. Raised on an island in South Carolina, singer-songwriter Trevor Hall realized at a young age that music was more than just a passion. It was, rather, his life's art. Trevor's music, a blend of roots and folk music, is imbued with a deep love of Eastern mysticism. Is that how you say that?
Mysticism.
Thank you. Along with numerous pilgrimages to India, he has also completed a series of sold-out tours and collaborations with artists such as Ziggy Marley, Jimmy Cliff, Michael Franti, Xavier Rudd, John Butler Trio, Modest Yahoo, and Nako and Medicine for the People. The Fruitful Darkness was Trevor's first independent release, supported by his fans known as The Villagers, became the #1 music campaign of its kind in 2017 and premiered at #4 on the iTunes alternative charts. In addition to being one of my all-time favorite musicians, Trevor has become a brother to me, a best friend to my husband, and we share a strong belief that really ties us both together. We both believe Emery Hall to be our soulmate.
Did you plan that out?
Welcome, Trevor.
Oh, God. My soulmate.
My soulmate.
No, my soulmate.
I mean, how does it feel knowing that we're stuck together for the rest of our lives?
Oh, it's a mixture of joy and fear.
I mean, we really are stuck together. So we've had a fun run the last couple of years. Maybe we should just start by talking about how we met. Do you remember?
I remember when you came into the house. I remember because you came because
I came to meet with the BCC.
Oh, that's why.
And we had been talking, Emery and I, a lot, but you and I hadn't had a lot of communication at that point.
No, you were kind of this mythical figure to me.
Yeah.
Emery was like, I met this girl, and and I was like hearing all about this KJ Letko.
Yeah.
And then, but I do remember being in the kitchen and the car pull up and I'm like, who is this girl that my wife is obsessed with?
Yeah.
And then I remember you walking in, and it's so crazy how you just never know how a person's going to be in your life.
Yeah.
Right when you meet them.
I know. Well, you were rehearsing all day for something with the
it was the Thanksgiving show.
No. You were rehearsing for Fruitful Darkness album release.
Oh, shoot.
That's what it was.
Oh,
and
God.
the band was here, and we went to Bar Taco.
Oh,
so we didn't have
a
ton of interaction because we said hi, we said hello, and then you went to record, and Emery and I had a whole day.
Oh,
so
God.
we met back up, and what we did when we came home is you read my chart.
Oh, I read your chart?
The first night we met, you read my chart. We sat outside right down there, and you read my chart.
Oh, my God. Good memory.
Yeah, and I felt very
Was it good or was it not good?
Well, you know my chart, so... But yeah, and then I remember
I'm like looking at your chart. I'm like, how can I say this in a nice way?
It was great. I recorded it and then I went upstairs and I called Clay and it was just like such an exhale because you're so normal. And you sometimes don't know, with these like spiritual celebrities, how woo-woo they're going to be. And I came upstairs, sat in your shrine room and called Clay and was like, oh my God, he's so human. You're going to love him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
God.
And then I guess the rest is kind of history.
That was only like a year ago.
No, it was almost 2 years.
Oh, 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, almost 2 years ago now. But we've been spending a lot of time together.
We have.
We've had a really fun week.
We've had a fun week.
So tell me how you're feeling in this moment. What's happening with you? All the things.
All the things. In this moment, I'm sad that you're leaving today.
Yeah.
You and Clay, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, we've had a really good week.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, in this moment, I'm just around the holiday times, I usually get a little kind of what's the word, like frenetic or something, because I think I just pick up on the general like consciousness of like everybody's rushing. A lot of people are traveling. Everybody's rushing to get like whatever gifts and like shopping and consumer. I don't know. It gets
a lot's happening.
Yeah, and or people are like trying to close out the year in a good way.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of at this time of year I always get a little like
yeah.
And
you're sensitive.
I'm sensitive.
Yeah,
and I kind of wait for that. I love New Year's.
Yeah.
I like love New Year's. So I'm just kind of like feeling a little like, I just want to get a breath.
Yeah.
Towards the
Well,
New Year's.
I think we should congratulate you because it's been a big year.
Yeah, it has.
And we just had the Spotify wrap up come out, which by the way, what a fabulous app, but that's for another conversation. And you had 52 million streams over the last year and 3 million hours of Trevor Hall, 3 million plus.
Jeez.
That's a lot of Trevor Hall playing.
Too much.
How does that feel? Like actually?
It's kind of like you can't wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
In a way. It doesn't
like 52 million people.
It doesn't. Yeah, it definitely doesn't. It's like doesn't compute.
Yeah.
Like properly to me. I'm just like, whoa. And then I just kind of move on.
But it's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Like it definitely gives you because I think as an artist there's a degree of separation that comes from being like whatever an artist or whoever you are to like your group of fans or your community. There is a wall, some type of weird separation. So like at least for me, it's like when I play, I hear people's comments and feedback and how much whatever music has like affected their lives or done for them. And that's really beautiful. But, that's only like here and there tidbits. So when you are able to kind of see these like, I don't know, these like numbers and stuff, you are kind of, it does like because there's a lot of moments when you are on your journey, where you question yourself, am I making a difference or what is this doing or like all this stuff. And really it's that connection that makes you feel alive and keeps you going. So when I see the numbers like that was one thing it gave. It's like, oh man, like keep going. Yeah.
Please keep going.
Because there's so many times, for me where I'm just like, oh man, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
I know. Well, you've been doing it for a really long time.
So long, yeah.
Yeah. And before we get into my question, speaking of that, one thing that hit me this year is you and John Mayer have been touring for like a similar amount of time. And he's just coming out with new songs.
Right.
And I was at his show and all we wanted to do. So he's on tour for a new album.
Right.
But everyone wants to hear the old stuff.
Right.
And I think that's so funny because it's like the reason why you go on tour is to premiere or like promote your new album.
Right.
But then half the people there just want to listen to the old stuff. And it didn't like click for me until I was at his show for whatever reason. And all we were thinking about was you, which is what happens now when we go to shows. So thanks a lot. You've like ruined our concert going experience.
Oh Lord.
We're like, how many seats does this hold?
No,
and like,
you get there, you're like, this is so much better than Trevor's concerts.
No, honestly, it's usually
Trevor
the other
has
way around.
A long way to go.
We find ourselves missing your shows, but it like clicked for me like how long you've actually been doing this because and then, you have these new songs like you came out with Fruitful Darkness last year, coming out with a new album, but then like everyone wants to hear like Lime Tree and Green Mountain State. How many plays? It was something crazy. Like
I think this year it had like 10 million plays. Which is so crazy because that song was not intended to be like a single or intended to be whatever, like the label at that time and my team at that time were like, oh, that album, Chapter of the Forest and whatever, this is just kind of like his passion project, like
Little
whatever.
Did they know.
And all the and I kind of felt that way too in a way because I wasn't really trying to like, I don't know, but there's other albums in the past where you have pressure from labels or whoever to write like a single.
Yeah.
And usually those songs are never everybody's favorite because I feel like people can feel you trying.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
That's true.
It's interesting that song, Green Mountain State, is like
Green Mountain State and Lime Tree. Like at every show, people
it's
just
so
go
funny.
crazy.
Yeah, it's just funny.
And it's interesting to me because knowing you now, like I didn't know you when you wrote those songs and you're like such a different human.
Right.
So does it like take you back or do you just turn it on and you just play the song or like
take me back meaning
to like the person you were? I always think about this when I'm like thinking about writing a book. I'm like, will I feel the same way in 20 years? Because it's sort of like this lasting thing.
Yeah, I think you never meet the same river twice. And every night, even though you may be playing that song every night, I honestly do visit it in a different way. Or I'm like, I usually do kind of am to answer your question, transported back to a place or the theme of that place when it was written, like I think about those things. And in that way, the songs can kind of be like these measurements of yourself, of your growth, of your journey in a way. It's like interesting because you're able to reflect. But yeah, it's just, I just try to let the song sing me rather than me sing the song, So
humble. So humble. No, you really are. I feel like the only thing I can relate that to, because we talk about this all the time. We talk a lot, Trevor and I. And I don't know what it feels like to be on stage in front of, so I'm constantly saying I can't even imagine being in this position. But to that extent, it's like my tattoos, like thinking about, my tattoo I got when I was 18. I obviously wouldn't get it now, but it's part of my story.
I feel the same way about my tattoos.
Yeah.
I always tell people that more than the meaning of the specific tattoo, it's like a meaning of the time I was in.
Exactly.
It's like a timeline.
Well, I love it. So speaking of new songs, we weren't talking about new songs, but I've had a chance for the first time because I came into the Fruitful Darkness. It was done.
It was finished.
And so I've had a chance now this last year, like to like not be a part of, but witness the song making process for the new album, which by the way, it's going to be so good. But it's really personal. And it's usually just like you by yourself until like 6 a.m., very like personal, intimate experience. And my question is, knowing that 10,000 people are going to be possibly hearing these songs. By the way, we announced Red Rocks. We announced Red Rocks. We're headlining Red Rocks. If you didn't know, Trev is headlining Red Rocks May 1st. And that was just announced. So another congratulations.
Thank you so much.
But knowing that, does that affect the songwriting process?
No, it doesn't. No, it that's why songwriting and the process of making music is so healing, I think. It's because everything else kind of falls away. You know, it's kind of a place of spaciousness for me that I'm not thinking about pleasing anybody. I'm just not thinking, you know,
Mm.
when it's really going well. I'm just not thinking. I'm out of my story. And it's so ironic because, like, the whole project is like Trevor Hall and like
Right.
it's your face on Instagram. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, but it's like,
That's my favorite
it's
thing
so
is when
funny.
we were in this has happened a couple of times. You're like, "Oh, I'm in town." We were, like, checking out at,
Right,
like, a store,
right, right.
and they're like, "Oh, where are you in town for?" And you're like, "Oh, my band's playing." And they're like, "What's the name of your band?" And you go, "Trevor Hall
Yeah,
Music."
yeah. I don't know. It's like, I don't know what to say. You know, it's like, oh, it's just,
It's me.
yeah, it's just me. But,
Yeah,
you know, but it's not, you
exactly.
know,
I know,
and
yeah.
that's kind of the strangely, like, I like to call it like a divine paradox in a way, because it's like, um, you begin to see yourself from another position, right?
Mhm,
You begin to see yourself as a witness almost,
mhm,
rather than like I'm in the story. And like, I think like you can
mm,
easily like make it your story if you want, but that's just not my style. And so to get back to like the music process, like when the songs are coming through, you know, I don't want to be involved, you
mm,
know, from the ego sense. I don't want to be involved. I want it to just come through and speak, and like, and me just translate, I guess, what's coming through, you know? So I'm not thinking about, oh man, like I'm gonna, these, you know, all these people are gonna hear this at Red Rocks or like this and that. Like
yeah,
all that comes later. All that comes after. The songwriting process for me is very like a lonely place almost,
yeah,
right? I don't wanna, not in a bad way, just like some people do really well with songwriting with other people, you
mhm,
know, or like collaborating, which I like to do, but my most intimate, like some of my most precious times of my life are when I am alone in that room, you know, with the door closed and these vibes are coming through, and I'm just in a place of space and non-judgment and non-thinking, and it's just creation. It's just raw, fresh energy that you're just witnessing. I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, it was funny because when Emery and I were in Nepal,
Mhm.
you had a lot of time
I
alone,
did, yeah.
and I feel like a lot of these songs were written in that time.
Oh, yeah, a lot. I mean, I was,
Like, you were just, like, every
yeah,
night.
it was weird. I mean, I mean, I guess it wasn't weird, but it usually happens where I have, like, I'm not, like, so much consistent, I think, and so I'll have, like, this burst where it's, like, a week, I'm just every day, boom, 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 and then maybe, like, 2 months go by,
Yeah,
you know? So I was definitely having this zone
it was
while you
cool.
guys were away, and I was, like, sending you guys all the songs,
It
like,
was
"Is this
so
cool or is this whack?" Or,
well,
like
that was my next question
Right.
is, like, so I got to listen to a lot of them, like,
Right.
super raw,
Right,
super
right.
cool. When Emery would, like, let me, she does this, like, weird control thing when you send us a new song where I, like, don't get to hear it for, like, until she, like, decides I'm allowed to hear it, but whatever, that's our karma. But at what point are you like, "This is really good?" You know, at what point does that observer that
Mhm.
you're talking
Uh-huh.
about sort of, like, understand? Because
Mhm.
I've watched you do it, and you really do remove yourself from it, and that's why it's hard for people to be like, "Oh my god, you've changed my life," or "You've healed me," because you really don't believe that it is you.
Right.
But you are the vehicle, you look the way you do, you sound the way you do, so
Right,
people
right.
can resonate, and, you know, that's part of we both struggle with this part of our spiritual journey, but,
Right.
that being said, at what point does that, like, click in where you're like, "This is really fucking good?"
It's a good question. I think, like, for me, it's, like, in the process, you know?
Yeah.
It's how it makes me feel,
Yeah.
you know, inside, you know,
Yeah.
where if it's not about, like, "Oh, man, this is really good." It's like, "Wow, this is making me feel
Mm.
like I'm feeling the thing,"
Yeah.
or, you
Yeah.
know, all the
Totally.
things, as KJ would say, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's not, it's a slight difference of me not saying, "Oh, this is really good," but this is making me feel that feeling. And that feeling for me is like, it's like a reminder, you
Hmm.
know? It's like, "Oh, man, this is possible," or "This is, inside you, or this space is inside you. You know, the sound is bringing me back. All these sounds, the music is bringing me to a place of silence, which is
Yeah.
kind of really cool and interesting. And when that feeling happens, that's when I get excited and I
Yeah.
want to share it. I'm like, oh
And
my
then you
God.
text it
Yeah. I'm like,
and
yo, like, what do you think of this?
yeah.
And then sometimes after, you know, that feeling, you know, your mind starts to come in and you're like, oh, is this good? Or
Yeah.
is, and then that part kind of sucks. But the initial part is
The
really,
initial
the
excitement
initial
is
excitement
awesome.
is really beautiful.
Well, I mean, as is the life of an artist, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely a roller
It
coaster.
is, it is.
I can attest to that being
Mhm.
Trevor's friend. It's a lot of up and down. But I mean, it's a lot of up and down being my friend. A lot of people ask me that. They're like, what's it like being friends with Trevor Hall? And I always
What do you
think
say? Answer honestly.
it's an adventure. It's
You're
an
being
adventure. Like,
nice.
you never know when I call or like when I FaceTime, like what's going to be going on the other end. But I sort of feel like that's the same thing about being friends with me.
Yeah, it's true.
Trevor and I are definitely more alike, and Emery and Clay
Yeah,
are
it's
more
so
alike.
true. That's very true.
So
It's
we're
very true.
usually the ones having like an experience.
That's true. That's a very kind way of putting it.
As Clay says, I understand you're having an experience that I cannot take
I
responsibility
can see
for.
him saying that. So, oh my God.
But it's why we all get along so well, and
It's
we're
true.
very lucky.
It's true.
The four of us are very, very close,
Mhm.
and I'm just, grateful for the dynamic. And our friend asked us the other night, we went out to a party, and he said, what's your secret? How do you guys do it? And I said, we don't put up with each other's shit.
Yeah, that's true.
And we really don't.
That's true.
Like, we
Yeah.
call each other out so in the moment, and it's not always very like nice or polite, but it's coming from such a place of like, I know you can be better.
Right.
And I
right.
see the best version of you,
Right.
and I'm holding you accountable to that version,
Right,
and you're
right.
not behaving
Right.
that way right now. Like
That's
Trevor.
really well said. That's well said. And you
Yeah.
can't do that with everybody,
No.
and when you find people
Yeah.
like that, it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Like you said to me yesterday, I want you to stop using the word hate.
Oh, yeah.
But that's like, and you didn't say it that lovingly as I just said it, but it's like coming from a place of like, I know you to be better than that.
Yeah. Well, I explained why.
Exactly. And you like are too bright to be, saying
Right.
I hate this or I hate that.
Right,
And
right.
I tend to make like extreme statements. So it's those kinds of things that, make it flow. But anyway, back to my question. Talking about, the work, like you were just saying, and how, you kind of go in these bursts.
Mhm.
Okay, so one of my favorite authors who I've tried to get you guys to read, but I'm not sure if you have, Stephen Pressfield. He wrote The War of Art and a book called Turning Pro. And
Mhm.
Turning Pro is about when you take your passion, your art, and you turn it into a career. There's like professional responsibilities.
Right.
Like you don't just get to like make music whenever you want. When it's your career, there's like responsibilities.
Yeah.
So my question is, watching this new album be made, I'm as like a fan, like, okay, I'm ready for another song, and your management is like, okay, we got to like start cranking on this new album, and also your bills and your rent and your whole livelihood is like reliant on like inspiration striking.
Right.
And my question is like, what's the line between like, I'm going to write a new song and also we need to drop a new album by X date? And how do you sort of like navigate that? Because it really is like all of your songs are not rushed. I've seen it happen. It's very organic, but also like you have to pay your rent.
Yeah. Oh man. I
Like-
get scared by that question.
It's so real.
Well, it's scary. It's scary. Like I've definitely, I guess, how could you say? I guess when I'm making music, when I'm in the process of making music or like this and that or whatever, I'm not thinking about livelihood, or I'm not thinking, is this my job? Or I'm not thinking like anything like that. Thank God.
Right.
Like really, like thank God. And I think my fear has always been like, of one day thinking that,
Mm,
of one day being like, I gotta write a new album because I gotta whatever, pay for this, or I gotta like buy this house, or I think that's the fear for me because, when you find something in your life that is so pure and healing for you, uh, especially in a day and age right now where everything is made into a product,
right.
every sacred thing is somehow made into a business.
Right.
Um, it just kind of freaks me out. I never want that. And
Yeah.
I understand, I'm not denying my responsibility. I understand I have a responsibility of supporting my family and supporting my partner, or, God willing, one day if we have children, like I have to support my children. All those things come with the duty of being
Professional
a
artist.
professional artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I never wanna think that way when it comes to music, because music is, at least not during the process.
Right.
Maybe afterwards, like, I need to, like, yeah, play the game, like, there's a beautiful quote in India, they say, "Bathe in the river, but don't get your hair wet," where
Mm,
it's like you can play the game, but not be affected by the game, and, I think that all that part, it's okay for it to come later. You have to be smart and all these things, but I never want that to be the goal, or the reason why I'm making a song.
right.
Because then I feel it in my body. I feel like I'm not being authentic. I feel like I'm not being truthful to myself, and it just gets on me, and I just feel really gross. But I've definitely battled with that in the past, so much, just with because, I got into business like so young,
I
I
know.
was so
Well,
young,
looking at the
and you had all these people that are telling you to do this and do that. And when you're
yeah.
young, you're forming your identity. And and then if you have all these older people who you kind of are like, oh, well, they must be right because they're old people. I don't know. Um, it was just confusing. So I've
Yeah.
definitely had to, like, find my way, I guess.
Well, I ask because it feels very authentic, and this podcast is like a business podcast. And I think
Mhm.
the other thing that he says is
Mhm.
the artist, the professional,
Mhm.
doesn't wait for inspiration to strike.
Mhm.
Inspiration strikes every morning at 9 a.m. when I sit down and I write.
Right.
And I find that with you, that it's not like, oh, I have to put out an album, but it's like, oh, like you sort of put the intention out there that
Mhm.
like it's kind of like time to start thinking about getting back in the studio. And
Yeah.
then it just sort of happens.
Y
And to me, that is the difference between a professional and somebody who's just, writing right. And Emery does it too. And I've watched her do it. Like, it's time to get ready to announce Nepal. And then it just
Mhm.
starts coming through her.
Yeah.
So it's not so much like, it's this really beautiful balance of like, this is a business. We're going to start thinking about a new album, but then also randomly we get a new song at like 2 a.m. your time,
Right.
when
Right,
we're,
right.
so it's not like, I don't know. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. Like, I think you do the things that you have to do, but it stays from like a very pure and like organic and authentic place. You
Yeah, I
found it
think
the balance.
it just comes naturally. Like, like, "Okay, it's now time for a new album. I'm feeling that. Like, what do we need to do to
Yeah.
present this?" Because when the music comes, you obviously wanna give it your all.
Right.
You want it to be served to as many people as it can be, and, whatever, you want each song that you've so lovingly, kind of nurtured to see as much light as it can, and I think that just comes, for me at least, it comes naturally. It's like, okay, now it's time to not worry about whatever writing and stuff. Now it's time to worry about the business part of this.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, like just be in this.
Yeah.
And but to get back to the original thing, like I don't want that part to come
First.
during the writing
Right.
part. Yeah,
It has
yeah,
to
that
come in the
part,
right
that
order.
kind of freaks me out, and I'm
Yeah.
always scared of that. I'm always scared of, oh, I'm gonna be affected by whatever the business and the fame and the all this stuff, but I have a good partner, to kind of slap me across the face if that ever happens,
And 2 best friends that
And
would never let you
and
get
2
to.
crazy best friends that that I'm so thankful for. No, I'm just kidding.
It's funny though, because going back to people who ask me, because we were fans before we met you.
Yeah.
And there is a difference. And it's like you said, you're sort of observing yourself when you're in that place. And it's really the same thing with Emery too. Like there's Emery, my best friend, and then there's the Emery in Nepal. And I kind of relate that to Trevor and Trevor on stage.
Right.
Like Emery in Nepal, like in a village with her camera, like speaking fluently to like these little children or this Amma or whatever is like the equivalent to you on stage. To me, it's like, it's still you, but it's like this like purpose that like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, that's like very separate from the Trevor that we like go skiing with and like play bananagrams with. And, other things.
Lose to bananagrams.
Yeah. Trevor's on a winning roll. But yeah, and it's just kind of different. And I think the same thing goes, for like our business.
Right.
Like, me on a call, you just don't have to listen to me on calls, whereas I have to listen to you sing. So, but it's like, it's separate. And as silly as that sounds, like marketing and what I do and helping people, and you helped me sort of like identify what it is I'm doing does feel purposeful to me. And the way you said it is you're like, reminding people they can fly, or, sharing, reminding people of their gifts. And then everybody needs that. And that's what I am really doing when I'm on my calls and when I'm like doing all that stuff. But it's very separate from like me running around, being an asshole with you guys.
Well, it's kind of like, it's when you're in your kind of, it's like almost like when you're in your natural state or your like flow state. Like I remember one of my mentors, my dearest, mentors, Usha, she one time told me that the feeling that you have when you play music, you need to grow into your everyday life. And I was like, oh, I never thought of it like that. She's like, it's right there. You're feeling this when you're in your natural, I guess, state, you can say, when you're in your flow or whatever it is, all those words. She was just like, you need to bring that, into when you're washing the dishes, when you're checking the mail, when you're going shopping for groceries, and it's like, whoa, yeah, you're right. Like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're in a space where you're not the doer anymore, and when she always says, when you realize you're not the doer, that's when the magic can happen. And
I actually do. It's so crazy because we have such different like careers or purposes or whatever, dharma, whatever you want to call it. But I feel that way when I'm giving my like, I do this 90-minute deep dive or whatever. And at the end of it, it's like I totally blacked out.
Yeah. It's like,
I don't even know what I said.
But that's what the magic is.
And it's like, and it's the only thing I can compare to what you do, because I'm obviously not on stage in front of all these people or whatever, but it's this thing that, people are like, oh, well, you're worth X amount an hour. And it's actually not me. It's it's whatever is going to pour out of me that's going to change your business. It's going to be what you need to hear. And I trust in it so much. Same thing with this podcast, actually. Like I trust in who my producer books, or like the timing of when people book, or you and I, it took a while for me to like ask you to be on.
Like, what's going on? Like, when does she just not like want me on her podcast, or what is the situation?
The reason why, because I've had so many requests.
Yeah, please explain to me why it's taking you so long.
Because I feel like you get so many requests.
Yeah, but it's
and it's
your
annoying.
podcast.
I know, and it's annoying. You know, and even I, as like this little person in your world, like the people that have come through the woodworks that like want to meet Trevor
Okay,
or
don't diminish yourself. How do you think I felt on the couch, like when new podcast with so and so, then like a week later, new podcast with, I'm like, oh God, this is like,
I just didn't want it to be like another
I know,
ask.
I'm just giving you a
And
hard
so
time.
that's why it took me a long time. But then I realized that
This
was
is
really
you know,
stupid.
I'm just explaining to everybody, this is my therapy. I just beat up, verbally abuse Krista like every single day. That's why she's such a
It's
good
really healing.
friend. Yeah, it's very healing for me.
But yeah, it took me a while to ask because I love our friendship.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
and we've like have such a beautiful space where we actually don't work
I get
together
it. Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And we did at the
Mhm.
beginning. You were having some transitional stuff. So we were taking over some things, social
Right.
media, marketing, whatever. And you have this epic team now. And we just get to be friends.
Right.
And I like value that so much.
I get it.
But also the podcast, like, I don't get paid to do it. There's no like business incentive other than I fucking love it.
Right.
And I love our conversations and think that, you know, it's about time people hear
I get
that.
it.
So I'm happy you're here.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. So speaking of all of this stuff that we
Mhm.
struggle with, something that you and I both struggle with and
Mhm.
also celebrate
Mhm.
is our spiritual journey and the impact on our business
Right.
and just on our lives. And with you, like you're a huge teacher for me.
Mhm.
You know, we laugh a lot, we joke a lot, but like my favorite times are like staying up till 3 a.m. just
Mhm.
listening to you tell stories of India.
Right.
And you gave me like on my 3rd trip here, my first photo for my shrine. So like
Right.
we have this crazy fun relationship, but we're also, you know, there's depth.
Right.
There's depth
There
there,
is
I
depth.
swear. Anyway, so for you, you know,
Uh-huh.
spirituality is like a huge part of who
Mhm.
you are. And to even say it's a part of you, it's like it is you.
Right.
And I think, you know, I knew that you were spiritual, obviously, before I met you, but now I realize like how much like it
Mhm.
is your whole life devoted
Mhm.
is the word I use. And so now, like, I was always curious, like, why you didn't share more of that,
Mhm.
like the chanting and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And now, like, the deeper I get, thanks to you and Emery, in large part, the
Mhm.
more I sort of understand
Mhm.
why,
Mhm.
like, you keep a lot of that so sacred. And my question is, I have a couple questions around this because I know this is like a conversation we both have a lot, is like, when do you decide or how do you decide to like share a story of Maharajji on stage and like
Mhm.
bring, like you just did this huge thing with the Boulder Theater,
Right.
because Maharajji's whole thing is, I talk about Maharajji a lot on here, so people know, is feed everyone, you know, feed people.
Right.
And so that's what you've like started bringing into this thing. And how does that feel? And so that's my first question is like,
Mhm.
when do you decide to like share a story or like go there or like make a song that's like very obviously
Mhm.
about your path? Because they all are,
Right.
but some of them are like,
Oh, no, I know what you mean.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I haven't figured it out. You
Yeah.
know, it's definitely, um, tricky, I guess, you know, because, just in my own experience, it's just my experience, you know, you know, when Maharajji first came into my life, you know, when I was 16 years old, 17 from, like, this
Yeah.
small town in South Carolina, I was completely in love with him. You know, I didn't care about if it made sense or not. I mean, you know, here I am, this kid, you know, imagine my parents, like I come back from boarding school, I'm like, I love this man in a blanket, you know, from India. And I talk to him and they're like, what the heck? Where do we, you know,
Oh my God, your
but,
dad.
but, you know, I found something that just lit me on fire and I wanted it to light everybody else on fire.
I so get
I
that.
wanted to share it with everybody and I wanted everybody to feel the way I felt because it felt so amazing to be in love, you know? And the painful part of that process was not everybody's gonna
Mm,
feel that. And not everybody's gonna feel because I was ignorant, not everybody's going to feel the same way as you, or not everybody is going to think that Maharajji is special or
Mm,
this and that. And that kind of like hurt me in a way,
mm,
or what was interesting was I would find somebody that would relate to Maharajji in a way that wasn't the way I related.
mm.
And then I'd question, "Oh, is my relationship with
Trevor with the
him
questioning.
yeah, is my relationship with him, like, not is it supposed to be like that?" Or like,
Yeah.
and it just got so confusing. And, for me, it's difficult because, I sing about what's in my heart and I sing about what inspires me. And obviously these things inspire me. Um, so I want to share that. I want to share what inspires me. I just have to like remember that like it's not going to inspire everybody the same way
Mm,
and everybody's going to take something, I guess, from it, and you have to just leave that. You're not in control of that, but Maharaji said something so interesting, it's so interesting today too, with
right.
just like everybody, social media and all these things where we're just documenting every moment of our lives and every emotion and all these things. Maharaji said, you shouldn't talk about your wife, your wealth, or your sadhana, or else they'll go away,
Yeah.
And all of my teachers, um, my gurus and mentors have all said the same thing too. They said that you should keep those that your practice or your relationship with your beloved in the innermost chamber of your heart,
Yeah.
and over time I've learned that they're correct, because when you release those things from your uh I guess being, it loses something,
Yeah.
some magic, and like, when I'm in India and I'm sitting in front of my teacher, he's telling me many stories and he's telling me all, but he's not disclosing his own personal, like, realizations in his own meditation. So I
Right.
think there's like
Well, that's it.
yeah, I
You
think there
just hit on
yeah,
it.
there
And I
is
just
this
realized
kind
it.
of this boundary, where like I love talking with you and sharing stories. I've shared with you like intimate stories,
Right. Yeah.
but I'm not like going, really
Right.
telling you my mantras or
Right.
like tell,
Right.
whatever, and then on top of that, it makes it 10 times trickier when you're in this kind of public
Right.
stage setting,
Right.
right? Where you kind of have more eyes on you than perhaps a normal or just a everyday whatever person,
Right.
which I am. I'm just saying that it's
You're
just
really famous.
you know what I'm saying. Don't BS me right now, you know. So
You're like
it's
so
that
famous.
makes me more on my guard,
Yeah.
and I think now I've gotten almost more private
Yeah.
rather than in the earlier days, I would just like wouldn't care. I would
Right.
just sing about whatever and like
Yeah.
where now it's kind of changed. I've kind of I speak about those things, but in a different language.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
it's more subtle.
it's
Well,
more
what's
subtle. It's more
really funny, I mean, two things you just hit on. I think the first thing is you don't actually share a lot of your personal experience. It's storytelling.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what you're really good at. You're
yeah.
like
I
a really,
love this
really good
storyteller.
storyteller.
Yeah,
And I was recently telling my friend this. She sings opera, and she would actually get mad at me if she heard me calling it opera, but it's I'm blanking on it, but she sings in another language.
right.
And I was at her show and I told her next time I want her to explain
Hmm.
about the song before she sings, because it's like so powerful, and I love when you get on stage and you do that.
Yeah,
And I just realized that when you are telling those stories on stage, you're telling a story about Maharajji. It's not like
right,
coming from like, I felt this way or
right,
I
right,
believe this.
right.
And I think that's really powerful. And Emery does that too. And we talked a lot about this on my podcast with her, just like being people that people do look up to in a spiritual sense,
Yeah.
of how you're walking the talk. I think the storytelling and the passing along of like, just information without saying, I believe this, or you should meditate this way,
Yeah.
or I think
Well,
that
because
that's
I
really
never
powerful.
like that's also like a huge fear too. Is like I don't want to be this like kind of teacher guru
Right.
thing. Those things that totally freaks me out,
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody to think like, oh, Trevor's telling me to
That
do.
I have to do
I
it.
don't like that.
Yeah.
Because Maharajji didn't tell anything to anybody.
Yeah.
He just Krishna Das says so beautifully that he. I'm not trying to compare myself to, but I'm saying all the people that inspired me, like nobody likes being told what to do.
Right.
We're all rebellious, right?
Right.
And the reason I was so inspired by Maharajji was I think that he never told me what to do in a way. He just shone like the sun, as Krishna Das said, and
Yeah.
flowers don't need a manual on how to bloom,
Yeah.
and all the people that inspired me in my life, they never told me what to do. They
Yeah.
just lived their lives full of love and light, and me witnessing that I was like, I want to feel that. I
Right.
want to be inspired by that. So that's just my own, flavor, I guess. That's my own
Yeah.
what I like. But so it's just everybody's different. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, but it is beautiful. And the other piece that I loved about it is it's so subtle that like I have, listened to, because we helped a lot with Fruitful Darkness. So I'd probably
Right.
listen to that album like, I don't know, a million
You're
times.
like, oh my
And
God.
Clay's like your biggest fan. So we listened to it in the car all the time. And we were talking late one night and I was like, where can I hear Maharajji's voice?
Right,
Is it recorded? This was during my really discovery. I'd read all the books and I was
Right.
talking to Trevor all the time. And you're like, oh, he's on my album. I was like, what?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I remember that.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like totally freaked out because at the very beginning of If I Was a Warrior, it's just him saying Ram.
Yeah.
And then I've now showed that to other devotees.
Right.
And they didn't know either. And that's how subtle it is.
Right.
It's like only for him, really.
Yeah.
It's like not for the masses. And nowhere does it say that that's Maharajji.
Right,
it's just
right.
if you pick up on it, you pick up on it, but it's there. And that's like who Maharajji is to me. Like it's always there. So it's really subtle. And I think it's really beautiful how you continue to navigate that path.
Yeah,
and
it's definitely a learning process.
The second piece of that I'm like really curious to know, I don't actually know the answer to this, is do you think that financial success can take away from your spiritual path?
Do I think that financial
in
success
your life,
in my life,
and this blowing up, like
wait, say it again.
Because this is something I asked the Baba in Nepal.
Right.
And he had an answer for me.
What did he say?
Well, I want to know your answer first, so I'll tell you. But my question is that you and I both struggle with this thing of like business, spirituality. Should we go be, should I go live in Nepal and be at the feet, or should I be here? And, one thing I will tell you that they said was, be where you are. And Ram Dass says that and everyone says that. But it's, don't wear orange robes and live in San Francisco.
Right.
Go to hot yoga and be in San Francisco. Don't shave your head.
Go to hot yoga.
That's literally what this fucking Baba said to me, was like, don't, if you want to be a monk or a yogi, then move to Nepal and be a yogi.
Right.
If you want to be a householder, be a householder. But my question is around money specifically.
Well, money specifically, I think that it's interesting because, in kind of like ancient times, I guess you could say, even now, a lot of yogis take a vow of poverty. That's part of their kind of practice, because, and they do it for a reason. You can't deny it's their, I guess, I don't know, their path or it not working, because it's obviously worked, right? For thousands of years.
Yeah.
And I think because of stuff like that or whatever, it's very easy for us myself included, to be like, oh, well, you know, money's bad, or material possessions are bad, or like, you know, you kind of go down this rabbit hole, and it can be just confusing, I think. Um, but at the same time, I don't think that, like, just because you have money doesn't mean you can't be like a spiritual person or be a yogi. Um, you know, one of the greatest spiritual characters of our time, Sri Ramakrishna, you know, um, he had instructions, you know, for both sides, for people that were going to live this monastic, I guess, lifestyle, and then for people that were at that time in Bengal were like extremely wealthy
Right.
people,
Right.
like landlords and aristocrats and artists and all this stuff. And he didn't say, you gotta, you know,
Right.
sell your house, and, you know, he said, no, no. He said, what's wrong with you being in the world? What's wrong with that? But he said, you know, you should be like a mudfish, right? Where it's in the mud, but the mud doesn't stick to it. It just slides right off its body, you know? Or like he said, for you, you don't have to renounce externally, right? You just have to, you can renounce internally.
Right.
Right. So he gave different instructions for each thing. And I thought that was so refreshing, because um it's kind of like, you know, if everybody was a monk, this world wouldn't continue.
Yeah.
If
Well,
everybody
I
was a
mean,
householder,
yeah.
this world wouldn't continue. You
Yeah.
know, it's just what you, I guess, came in to do. But to answer the question, like, I've definitely had my challenges
Yeah.
with thinking like, oh man, making this money is somehow like inauthentic or something.
Right.
It's weird, you
I know.
know?
I have
And
the same
I'm definitely
struggle.
not like, don't have the answer for you,
Yeah.
you know? Um, but I think I've gotten better with it. I think I've,
I
you
feel
know,
like
like,
even since I've known you.
yeah, I think like, well, I think like, um, the problem isn't, again, I asked Ushama one time about this, you know, and you know, she's like, money or this isn't the problem, you know, it's how it's being treated and how it's being used. And, you know, and you see these people that are very wealthy people that are spending all their money on themselves
Right.
and their own comfort and their own luxuries and all these things. Then you have this money, there are these people that are using all their money to help people, to
Yeah.
serve people. Maharajji said this, he said money, there's no problem with money, it's how you use it, you know, and money should be used to serve others, you know.
Yeah.
Imagine if we had that mentality
I know.
today, you know, there's no problem. It's no problem with, you know,
I know. We
uh,
take ourselves so
they take it
seriously.
so
We both
seriously.
really do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
I
annoying.
know, it's so
Yeah.
annoying. And we like constantly call each other out on it, and you'll be like, stop doing
Yeah.
it. And I'm like, you take it. And you're like, I'm telling you, it's like this like back and
Yeah.
forth of like, we're not getting anywhere, but we are.
Yeah.
But what he said to me
The
when I
Baba.
asked this, the Baba, I
Yeah.
said, you know, and he wasn't getting my question. And I had to like repeat it
Right,
multiple
right, right.
times because, you know, at first I said, can you be a yogi and have a business? And he was like, well, of course not. Because a yogi means you have no material possessions.
Right,
You have
right,
taken a vow of poverty. And so then I switched my question to being a householder on a spiritual journey.
right,
Like, then can you have abundance?
right,
Because I love business.
right.
And I love being successful and I love making other people successful. It's like,
Yeah,
and to me, you know, success is, you know, financial success and heart success. Like that's real success is
yeah,
when you have success of the heart and financially. It has to be both. But for my job, I literally make other people money. That's like what I do.
right.
And so I like struggle with this. And what he said was, you know, you absolutely as a householder can have financial abundance and it will not
Uh-huh.
take away
Right.
from your spiritual growth as long as you keep coming back to visit me. That's what he said. And then also, you know, you're always in integrity and you're serving others and you're, you know, sharing it with others. And in
Yeah.
that moment, I was like, I am in integrity and I make the hard decisions and I like felt okay with that. but it was cute. And then at the end, I told you the story, but the guy came up to me and he goes, "Business Yogi, like, you okay?" And I just
And he was
start like bawling, because I
bawling
take
out of
it so
wait,
seriously.
bawling out of sadness
No
or bawling
joy, like,
oh,
just like
yeah,
I
yeah.
felt like allowed. Like
Right.
I've been, I feel like not taking bigger risks and doing things in my business sometimes because I'm like, maybe this isn't,
Right,
spiritually
I get it.
authentic or whatever.
I
And
get it.
I just know that we
I
both
trust
have
me, I
that.
get it, I get it.
Yeah.
But
And
the
it's,
fact that you're even thinking about these things shows your
yeah,
authenticity. Like one of my teachers says, the very desire to be good is goodness
yeah.
itself,
Deep seeking is
Yeah.
enough is what
But
someone said to me.
I can't, I'm saying, but I mean, I would disagree with him in a way
Yeah.
that a yogi can't, but because I personally have met householders or whatever that are so far advanced, so more advanced than a lot of sadhus I've seen, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, and I think that it doesn't, Maharajji said, it doesn't matter if you're a sadhu or a householder, it only matters how much you love God,
Yeah.
And so I would disagree with him just in the
I like
sense of
that.
like,
Yeah.
um, you can't to be a yogi, like you can't be whatever.
Right.
I don't think that's true. I think that there's plenty of examples, even in not only our modern day, but even in ancient times, like, King Janaka, who was Sita's father, was considered a realized yogi, and he had all the pleasures of life and palace and all this thing, and um and it was that he's used a lot as an example
Right.
for household or for people that are, I guess, like in quote in the world, whatever,
Right.
that are devoted to the supreme or
Right.
whatever. It's the separation thing that gets kind of tricky.
It
It's the
does.
duality thing, and
Yeah.
if you're just seeing everything as uh consciousness, I
Yeah.
guess it wouldn't be a problem. Like um somebody that really kind of, I guess, like helped me in the process was Rani Rashmani, who was um a fisherwoman, very low caste woman, who married this really wealthy aristocrat, Bengali aristocrat, and he died, and she got like all of his money. And she was this just badass champion of the poor and the people. During Sri Ramakrishna's time, she built Dakshineshwar, the whole temple with her
Wow.
own money. She would do like these like epic acts, where like the British government at that time didn't allow the fishermen to fish in this one part because of whatever. So all these families were like dying because
They
they
couldn't
couldn't, yeah.
fish.
So
Yeah.
she bought
The
that part
thing.
of the river.
Yeah.
And, like
Totally.
it was, it was just like an example of somebody that's just a complete, that a good example,
Yeah.
and I think what it comes down to, like really honestly, what it comes down to is just unselfish action or selfish motives,
Yeah.
like when I see you, I
Yeah.
always I mean, I call you Jambu, right?
Yeah.
Because like you are a champion of people's goodness. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people like you that truly bring out people's just best, like no pun intended, authentic selves. Like
Mm.
it's such a beautiful thing to watch, and um it's so rare, we're constantly cutting people down today, in our
I mean, I
minds.
do that too.
I'm not saying you don't do that, but I'm saying like,
If we're being
but
really
no, but
authentic.
that's the other day why I
Yeah.
was like, I don't want you to use the word hate,
Right.
because when I look at you and see
Yeah.
you, like you are this incredible champion. So like, if you're like making money off
Doing
that
that.
process,
Yeah.
like I don't find any fault in it, because you're really just doing what, in my eyes, you just are like meant to do,
Yeah.
I think what it comes down to is money being used for just um kind of just unrighteous, I guess, measures. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's still a
I mean,
process of figuring
to
out.
be continued. It's a big
It's a
conversation.
big
And I
conversation.
think I enjoy having it with you because we're like, I know we fall on similar, sides of that
Right.
coin, and just, wanting to have an abundant life, wanting to
Mm-hmm.
get massages and
Right.
also go to India,
Yeah.
and also, not needing any of that.
100%.
And just like, where is the line? And
Yeah.
and I've had this conversation on this podcast before, and, people always give a different answer, but the one thing that I did want to touch on is you were saying that, some of the most spiritual people aren't sadhus.
Right.
And Gay Hendricks, who was on my podcast, he wrote in the late 90s a book called The Corporate Mystic.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about all the time that the greatest spiritual teachers he knows don't call themselves spiritual teachers.
Right.
And that some of these really high up business guys are actually like these deeply spiritual. And that just gives me hope.
Right.
Like, I think that we're like in an upswing. I really do believe that. One of my teachers said, with Trump and everything here, like, it's actually a part of the upswing because it's waking people up in a way that it has to be a certain way for people to make a change. And so I do believe that. And I think business, Gay Hendricks said that, because he's this big business mentor, with Jeff Bezos and the Mike Dell and all those guys that have like really made our technology what it is, saying that, they are these awake humans.
Right.
And that, in all of his seminars, it used to just be women. And now it's like male CEOs too. And it's like consciousness is really shifting in a direction where we also live in a capitalist society and we have to make decisions, and we can be good in business and we can be good people. What a concept. So, so on that note, I asked the same two questions to everybody at the end of the podcast, starting with an inauthentic, maybe a decision that you've made, and how it maybe impacted your business, and you knew maybe in the moment it wasn't authentic, but and maybe what you learned from that. If you have an example.
In my business specifically?
Yeah, specifically in your business, like around your career. Like maybe, Emery's was partnering with a brand that was really big, but then was like, fuck. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And at the time, maybe it felt authentic, but now you're like, maybe that wasn't
the right decision. Yeah, I mean, shoot, I have so many.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can, like...
We don't have to name names.
No, I don't know if it's more like a specific thing. I think it's more,
or just like a
generally,
general,
I think it's letting the I think attraction of like, oh God, for instance, like just being told like we need a single for this album. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true, like we need you to do this or be this or sound like this in order for you to be quote successful or like make money, or like when inside I feel it in my whole body that I don't want to do this, right? I don't want to, this doesn't feel right, and me ignoring that voice is, I think, the problem for me, because I definitely have a, people pleaser kind of character. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yo, really? Part of
Trevor likes everyone to be happy.
I want everybody to be happy. Yeah. Part of myself that can really override a lot of decisions. And I used to think that was the correct way, is to just please, and because you're being humble and whatever.
Totally.
And I think that as time's gone on, I've seen how bad that's got, the situations it's got me into have not been good.
Yeah.
And so for me, those inauthentic moments are when I'm not, like, to put it simply, speaking my truth or doing what I feel to be right, because I don't want to hurt anybody or displease anybody or like whatever. It's that's kind of been my biggest lesson, I think, with
Totally.
with
Yeah. Even like an example that I'm thinking of is
yeah,
like we'll be in the green room and you like
uh-huh,
instead of speaking up
right,
and just saying I need some space. Like
yeah,
I'm not about to go on stage. I've just had 3 glasses of
yeah,
wine and am being super loud.
yeah, yeah.
But instead but instead of being like, Krista,
You loud?
get the fuck out. I need some
Yeah,
space. Like you
right.
don't want to like
I know, I
hurt
don't
my
know
feelings or
why. I
speak your
don't
truth. And then it becomes this internal battle. But
well,
we've had
let's
this
just be clear, it's not just with you,
No,
but it's
totally.
like it's
Totally.
with it
But
I don't know why I can't do that.
yeah.
I don't
And
know
I think
why.
luckily,
Uh-huh,
I get your truth.
uh-huh.
When you want me to be quiet now, you can tell me. And I just, maybe you should just start seeing the rest of the world like me. That's like your worst nightmare.
That is my worst nightmare.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've
just
like
like
watched
what
you, put other people.
accommodate or something, accommodate. And I think
Exactly.
that that's just always got me into trouble. And it's
Hmm.
one of those things in your life where like what you have to do.
For
Like
sure.
what you have to do to like whatever, like be correct or not just be correct, whatever. You know what you have to do in
Yeah.
order to grow. But
Yeah.
it's so hard for you to do it,
And you'll just keep
and
learning the
and you're
lesson.
right there. Our Guruji tells this awesome story. He uses it a lot, where there's like a guy on an ox cart, and
Right.
these two oxes, and they're going on this trail, and they've gone on this trail every day for so many years or
Yeah.
whatever it is, like so much time, and so it's just like natural, and one day it rains like really intensely, and that road is blocked because it's muddy and there's whatever water, you can't pass that way. So the coachman naturally, pulls the reins for the ox to go to the left or whatever.
Right.
And the ox are thinking, "Oh, what is this? My master is drunk.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the way. We have to go this way. This is the way to go." But the oxman's like, "Oh my God, my ox, they're being so stubborn. They don't know that this is
Right.
the wrong way," right? And it's a symbolism like for the mind, and the senses, right?
So true.
It's like once those wheels have been making those indentations, right, in the earth,
Forever.
right? So your actions have been making these indentations in your mind, and it's so hard to pull the ox the other way, because even though you know that that's the right way to go.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so it's just interesting that it's just I'm still learning how to do that. I'm still learning how to just be, I guess, truthful or speak my truth,
Yeah.
and not worry about what anybody's gonna say or feel. You have to do what you have to do.
But I mean, I appreciate it because that's my whole thing.
Right,
It's like
right, yeah.
I would rather you. I don't think there's anything that you would say behind my back that you wouldn't say truthfully to my face. And I think that, and like it goes both ways. And I think that is like the only friendships I'm interested in like having
and
right
it's
now.
so refreshing.
Yeah. And so I appreciate it. And I think you're doing a really good job at it. And on that note,
thank God.
the best way to end is always sharing a moment of authenticity. So maybe a time that it wasn't super easy to like be in integrity or make a decision, but you knew you had to because it was the authentic or right thing to do. And, just sort of like what that is like, because sometimes that's not easy.
Oh gosh, these are more rare and few in between.
That's not true. You make a lot of authentic decisions. I can give you like 5 examples, but I want you to come up with it on your
own. Gosh, an authentic moment.
You want me to give you an example?
Yeah, give me an example.
When like maybe a commercial or like
Oh yeah. I mean, I've gotten offered like Burger King ad, for a bunch of money, and
I mean,
I turned it down.
But that to me like would be really hard.
Yeah, well, it wasn't for me.
That's why you're so authentic. Like it's hard for you to think of authentic things because you make these decisions every day. Like,
well, yeah, I mean that's a big one. That type of thing was easy for me just because of just how sacred I guess the cow is to my spiritual.
Okay, yeah. So maybe that one.
That was easy.
Okay. But something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I think like I could almost use the same example of like not, recording like a song because I felt like it wasn't me, or
Right.
actually going as far as recording the song, which has happened many times, and being pressured by whoever to release the song because they think it'll make me a bunch of money
Yeah.
or be on the radio, and me just saying no because it's not. I don't feel like it's me. And some people may say, "Oh, that's foolish. Why don't you just, there's that argument of, well, you should just do that because then you'll have all this money and then you'll be able to do what you want."
Totally.
And it's like, yeah, that's true. That's I recognize that view. Like I get it. That's definitely a view, but that's not my view.
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck off. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
Can't help you.
yeah. But I think like, I don't know, like, I don't know why I'm like thinking of this story. Like, I don't know if it has to like do with like authenticity, but um there's so many different we can have a whole nother podcast on like views of like success and
Well, totally.
what does success mean? Is it financial? Is it
Right.
happiness? Is it whatever? But like I think for me, like my most like authentic or successful moment in my career um was, I have this whole album, Kala, that's inspired by my grandmother of what she told me, when she said, time is such a wonderful gift, And it was really interesting for me to hear that because I've always been pressured by time. I've always felt like time is this thing that I'm running out of, and I got to figure out the secrets of life before I die, or else I'm a failure, whatever it is. Um, so the whole album was kind of about how her words, "Time is such a wonderful gift," had helped heal that kind of view in my mind or view in my mind. But the interesting thing about the whole thing was um, how it made me view. I'll try to condense the story as much as I can.
Wrap it up.
Okay, I'm sorry, but
I'm just kidding.
how
I love your story.
how time became like a spirit,
Yeah.
and how there's so many times in my life where I'm like, oh my God, that was so arranged by something higher than myself. And my grandmother inspired this whole album. The whole thing was, I've talked about my grandmother so much, whatever. And I turned the album into the label. They say, okay, our release date's going to be August 16th. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's my dad's, birthday.
Yeah.
That's so funny. How coincidental, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, you just continue, being a touring musician, you're kind of just going where the wind takes you, and you don't plan anything really. And you're on tour, and I'm on tour, and we're releasing this album. And I'm on tour, and then I look at the calendar. I'm like, oh my God, like on August 16th, we're going to be in Hilton Head. We're going to be in South, where I grew up, So I'm going to be able to be with my dad. We have this day off, I'm going to be with my dad for his 60th or whatever it was, birthday. And, which is awesome in itself. And then I have this day off, like, and the album will come out. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But what I didn't put together was when I got to Hilton Head, it's my dad's birthday, right? Emery's whole family comes and surprises him, so we're all together. My aunts and uncles come, like the whole thing. And I get to be with my grandmother on that day. I get to go into her nursing home where she was and like play her the album that she like inspired. And it was the most like, I mean, I was in tears, bawling. It was just this full circle moment, the most authentic, successful
That was it.
moment of my career, more than Red Rocks, more than, playing in front of whoever,
Yeah.
it was that moment, it being with my grandmother, So I think that, I don't know why that story was coming, but it was just to talk about what's authentic and to you.
I mean, I know I
to you, what's successful to you, like that's what I count as my most cherished memory rather than you know, playing on a big stage or whatever it is, you
I
know.
love that. But playing on a big stage is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Everything is right on time.
Yeah, everything's on time.
I know you love it when I quote your songs back to you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like your favorite thing that I do.
Yeah. Oh my God. I just love it so much.
Trev, thanks for coming on my podcast.
I can't believe it's over.
We'll do it again.
Can we do it again?
Yeah.
I hope it was good.
It was so good. So calls to action. I know them. Trev, I'm going to do your calls to action.
Okay, do it.
So TrevorHallMusic.com. He's going to be announcing his spring tour very soon.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this, though I won't see it because I'll be in Nepal.
You will be in Nepal.
But very excited about your opener. Big fan.
Big fan.
And Red Rocks, May 1st.
May 1st.
There are still tickets, but you better hurry.
Yeah, Citizen Co. Prizing Appalachia. It's a big one.
Big one. And some epic new merch, I have to say, in the store.
Even though it's not blue and orange.
It's not yet. There
Krista's
will be
colors.
a blue and orange piece of merch, and you're welcome in advance. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun getting to witness, you know, the process.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for our friendship.
I am too.
I love you very
much. I love
much.
you so much, even though I verbally just kill you every single moment of every day.
It's the brother I always never knew I wanted. Something like that.
Oh, God.
Anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you so much.
And to everybody listening, thank you. And until next time, keep growing.